There's a truth that most people don't want to face. Your problem is not a lack of motivation. You're not lazy. You're not incapable. But you are missing something far more important: discipline. Welcome to Toad Hun Moringe, where we don't try to change our lives overnight, but instead focus on something much simpler, getting 1% better every day. If you really think about it, most of your days start the same way. You wake up, delay a little, scroll a little, tell yourself, I'll do it later, and before you know it, the day is gone and you didn't truly take control of anything. It's not because you don't want to change. It's because you're being pulled by small habits, repeated every single day, to the point where you don't even notice them anymore. Discipline is not something you're born with. Discipline is something you build. It's a series of small decisions, repeated long enough until it becomes who you are. And here's the interesting part. Most of the things that create discipline don't cost any money, but they do require you to be honest and serious with yourself. In this episode, we're going to walk through 13 practical ways to build discipline. Not surface level motivation, but small specific changes that, if you actually apply them, will change the way you live, the way you work, and the way you see yourself. You don't need to become perfect overnight. You just need to start adjusting little by little. And over time, you won't recognize the old version of yourself anymore. The only question is, if you truly want your life to be different, are you willing to change your smallest habits? Part 1, discipline starts with your sleep. There's a statement that might sound a bit harsh at first, but if you really sit with it, it can completely change how you see your mornings. It goes like this. If the first decision you make is snoozing your alarm, you've already lost the battle. That might feel extreme, but think about what's actually happening in that moment. When you wake up, you're given your very first decision of the day. It's not a big one, it's not complicated, it's simply this: get up or stay in bed. But that tiny decision sends a powerful signal to your brain. It tells you it's okay to delay, it's okay to push things back. I don't have to start right now. And the problem is, once you start your day in that state, it doesn't just stay there. You delay getting up. You delay starting your work. You delay facing anything uncomfortable. And by the end of the day, you're left wondering why nothing meaningful got done. Here's the deeper truth. Most people don't fail because they don't try. They fail because they start their day the wrong way. They think waking up early is about setting more alarms, but it's not. It's about when you go to bed. You cannot wake up at 5 a.m. feeling sharp if you went to bed at 1 a.m. It sounds obvious, but most people still try to force their mornings instead of designing their nights. Instead of setting 5 alarms to wake up, what if you set 1 alarm to go to sleep? It sounds counterintuitive, but that's where the real shift happens. When you remove the safety net of multiple alarms, you're forced to respect your sleep. You stop telling yourself just 1 more episode or just 10 more minutes. You start thinking differently. You start asking, if I don't go to sleep on time, tomorrow will cost me. And that awareness is where discipline begins. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to wake up early. Discipline is about knowing when to stop at night. A lot of people want to win the morning, but they refuse to take control of their evening. They want a better version of themselves tomorrow, but they're not willing to change their behavior tonight. And that's why they stay stuck in the same loop, waking up tired, starting the day unfocused, working without clarity, then staying up late trying to compensate for what they didn't do. If you want to break that cycle, you don't need more motivation. You need one simple shift. Change how you end your day. Try something small tonight. Instead of letting the night drift, choose a specific time to go to bed. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 9 p.m. Just make it a little earlier than usual. And more importantly, keep your word to yourself. Because every time you follow through on a small promise like that, you're building something much bigger. You're building trust in yourself. And when you trust yourself to do what you said you would do, discipline is no longer something you chase. It becomes who you are. Part 2, feed your mind, not just your entertainment. There's a quote from Jim Rohn that, if you really think about it, can completely shift how you see your daily habits. He said, most people that are broke have bigger TVs than they do libraries. It sounds harsh, but there's a deeper truth behind it. Having a big TV is not the problem. Entertainment is not the problem. The real question is, how much of your life is being consumed by it? You might spend 2, 3, even 4 hours a day watching videos, scrolling through content, consuming things that don't really move your life forward. But when it comes to reading, learning a new skill, or taking time to think seriously about your future, suddenly you feel tired or busy, or you tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow. And that tomorrow, repeated every day, is what keeps you stuck. The issue is not that you don't have opportunities. The issue is that you're consuming too much of what doesn't help you grow. Your brain is wired for dopamine, and platforms like TV, TikTok, YouTube, they are incredibly good at delivering it. Fast, easy, and endless. But what's the cost? Your attention span gets shorter. Your ability to focus weakens. You become used to things being quick and easy and start avoiding anything that requires depth and effort. And that's where discipline starts to break. Discipline is not about working only when you feel motivated. Discipline is about doing the work even when it's not exciting. But if your brain is constantly trained to seek instant stimulation, sitting down to read a book, learn a skill, or build something meaningful becomes incredibly difficult. That's why upgrading your TV to a library is not about objects, it's about priorities. What are you feeding your mind every single day? If you constantly fill it with shallow content, drama, and distractions, don't be surprised when your thinking becomes scattered and unfocused. On the other hand, if you start replacing even a small portion of that time with learning, reading, or consuming high-quality content, things begin to shift. Not instantly, but inevitably. Here's something most people overlook. Successful people don't avoid entertainment completely. They simply don't let it dominate their lives. They choose what they consume. They don't sit passively and let content control them. They actively select what helps them grow. And this is directly connected to discipline. Discipline is not only about what you do, it's also about what you choose not to do. You don't have to eliminate entertainment, but you do need to question it. Is this helping me move forward? If the answer is no, then at least reduce it. Instead of watching one more meaningless video, read a few pages. Instead of scrolling for another 30 minutes, learn something new. These are small changes, but done consistently, they create a massive gap over time. Discipline is not built from big decisions. It's built from repeated daily choices. You don't need to read 10 books a month. You just need to start with 5 pages a day. What matters is consistency. And over time, something shifts. You stop being pulled into distractions. You start finding genuine interest in learning and improving yourself. And at that point, discipline is no longer something you force. It becomes part of who you are. Part 3, protect your focus. There's something most people don't realize. They don't actually lack discipline. They're just living in an environment that constantly breaks their focus. And as mentioned clearly, your goals should matter more than the notifications you allow. That sounds simple, but if you pay attention, your phone is quietly controlling how you think and how you work every single day. A message comes in, a social media notification pops up, an email arrives, a small vibration. Each time, your attention gets pulled away. And the problem is not the interruption itself. It's the fact that you never fully return to deep focus. You might think checking a message takes just a few seconds, but in reality, it can take 5, 10, even 20 minutes to get back into the same mental state you were in before. And if that happens multiple times a day, your entire day becomes fragmented. You're not fully working. You're not fully resting. You're just switching back and forth between small distractions. That's not a discipline issue. That's a focus protection issue. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Most of the notifications you receive are not as important as you think. You don't need to respond instantly. You don't need to always be available. You don't need to know everything happening in real time. But because you've gotten used to always being connected, turning it off feels like you might miss something. And that's the trap. You're afraid of missing information, but you're actually missing your own life. Highly disciplined people are not necessarily stronger than you. They just design their environment better. They don't let their phone decide when they work. They decide when they connect. There's a powerful example. Someone who only allows one person to call them directly while everything else is silenced. It sounds extreme, but it's not isolation, it's prioritization. What are you prioritizing? If you say your goals matter, but you allow every notification to interrupt your focus, then your actions don't match your intentions. Discipline is not about trying to focus in a noisy environment. Discipline is about removing the noise first. You don't need to respond instantly. You can schedule time to check messages. You can turn off unnecessary notifications. You can use do not disturb. These are small actions, but they completely change how you work. When you create blocks of time with zero interruptions, you experience something many people have lost: deep focus. You work faster, you think more clearly, you feel in control of your day. And most importantly, you start realizing you can actually handle hard tasks. Not because you're more talented, but because you're no longer being pulled out of your flow. There's a common mistake. People think they need more discipline to focus, but in reality, they just need fewer distractions. If you want to change, start with something simple. After this, pick up your phone and ask yourself, which of these is truly important? Which is just a habit? Which is pulling me away instead of pushing me forward? Then start turning them off. You don't have to do everything at once. Just begin, because every notification you remove is a piece of your focus you reclaim. And when you reclaim enough of it, you'll realize something powerful. Discipline is not about trying harder. It's about creating an environment where distractions no longer control you. Pot fear, hack your algorithm. There's something that, once you truly understand it, will completely change how you see social media. You're not just using the algorithm is also shaping you. And as mentioned clearly, don't let the algorithm drag you into mindless distractions. It sounds simple, but in reality, most people are caught in a flow they don't control. You open your phone and you don't know what you're about to see. One video, then another, then something stimulating, then something distracting. And before you realize it, 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes even more is gone. But the biggest danger is not the time lost. It's that you're letting something else decide what you think about. The algorithm doesn't care who you want to become. It only cares how long you stay. And to keep you there, it feeds you what's most addictive. Fast content, emotional content, highly stimulating content. These don't help you grow, but they keep you hooked. And if you're not intentional, you'll slowly get pulled into a world where you consume a lot, but move very little. That's why there's an interesting perspective. Some people spend hours on social media, but they don't get dragged down. In fact, they learn a lot. Why? Because they don't let the algorithm decide, they train it. Every time you like a video, you're telling the system, give me more of this. Every time you pause longer on a piece of content, you're signaling interest. Every time you click not interested, you're setting a boundary. You are training your feed every day, whether you realize it or not. So the real question is, what are you training it to become? If you constantly watch meaningless content, don't be surprised when your feed is filled with it. But if you start being selective, follow people who are ahead of you. Watch content that teaches you something, engage with ideas that push you forward, then over time, your feed transforms. And at that point, social media is no longer a time drain. It becomes a tool, a mini university, as it was described. This is one of the biggest differences between disciplined people and everyone else. It's not that they don't use social media, it's how they use it. Unintentional users get pulled. Intentional users pull it toward them. You don't have to delete your apps. You don't have to quit entirely. You just need to be deliberate. When you see something low value, don't engage. When something triggers negativity, remove it. You have control. And every time you choose, you reshape your mental environment. Here's something powerful. What you see daily becomes your standard. If you're constantly exposed to disciplined, focused, growth-oriented people, that starts to feel normal. But if you're surrounded by shallow, distracting, or negative content, that becomes your baseline. You don't need to change everything overnight. Just start small. Open your feed. Look at what's there and ask, is this helping me grow or pulling me away? Then start adjusting. Unfollow. Mute. Engage intentionally. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, but over time, the difference becomes obvious. You stop scrolling unconsciously. You start learning every time you open your phone, and at that point, Discipline is no longer about resisting social media. It's about using it to serve you. Part 5, master your list. There's a line that, if you truly understand it, can completely change how you see discipline. Your lack of discipline is actually a lack of clarity. It sounds simple, but it hits deeper than most people expect. You're not procrastinating because you're lazy. You're not inconsistent because you're weak. You procrastinate because you're not clear on what to do next. Inside your mind, there are too many things: tasks, ideas, unfinished thoughts, things you're afraid to forget, and all of them are running at the same time. So when you sit down to work, you're not facing one task. You're facing chaos. And when things are unclear, your brain chooses the easiest option: delay, not because you don't care, but because you don't know where to start. That's why highly disciplined people are not necessarily stronger. They just have systems. They don't keep everything in their head. They write it down. Checklists, task lists, processes. It sounds basic, but it's powerful because your brain is not designed to store information. It's designed to process it. When you try to hold everything in your head, you're using mental energy for the wrong things. You're constantly in a state of trying to remember, and that drains you. When you're drained, your discipline drops. So the first step is not to do more. It's to get clear. Try something simple. Grab a piece of paper or open a notes app and write down everything that's in your mind. Don't organize it yet. Don't make it perfect. Just get it out. You'll feel lighter immediately because you're no longer holding it all inside. But that's just the beginning. The next step is to organize. Not everything is equally important. Not everything needs to be done now. You need to identify what matters, what's urgent, what can wait, and most importantly, the order. There's a powerful idea. Sequencing equals success. The order in which you do things determines your results. You can work hard, but if you work in the wrong order, you won't move forward. On the other hand, when you have a clear list, you know exactly what to do next. You don't have to rethink your plan every time you start. You just execute. And that's critical for discipline. Discipline is not about constantly making decisions. Discipline is about reducing the number of decisions you have to make. When you have a checklist, you don't ask, what should I do now? You look and act. That's why successful people have systems for almost everything. Workouts, meals, work, travel. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on structure. And once something becomes a system, you don't need discipline to start. You just follow it. There's another major benefit. When everything is written down, it becomes transferable. You can delegate, you can scale, you can buy back your time. But if everything lives in your head, you can't share it. You can't replicate it. You can't grow. And that's where most people get stuck. They do a lot, but they don't go far. If you want to change that, start simple. Every night, write down the 3 to 5 most important tasks for the next day. Not 20 tasks, just 3 to 5. And the next day, start with those. No rethinking, no switching. Just execute. Over time, something shifts. You no longer feel overwhelmed. You're no longer stuck at the starting point. You build momentum. And once momentum builds, discipline is no longer a struggle. It becomes a natural outcome. Part 6, stack your habits. There's a quote from James Clear that, if you truly understand it, will change how you approach self-improvement forever. He said, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. It sounds great, but the real value is in how you apply it. Most people make the same mistake when they try to change their lives. They try to do everything all at once. They decide, starting tomorrow, I'll wake up early, go to the gym, eat clean, read books, work harder, stop using my phone. It feels powerful, but within a few days, it collapses. Not because they lack effort, but because they're putting too much pressure on a system that isn't ready. You can't build a tall structure on a weak foundation. And habits work the same way. If you try to change 5 things at once, you will almost always fail. Not because you're weak, But because your strategy is flawed, that's why habit stacking is so powerful. Instead of doing everything at once, you focus on one thing, just one, but you repeat it long enough until it becomes automatic. For example, if you want to build a reading habit, don't start with 30 minutes a day. Start with 5 minutes or even 2 minutes. It sounds too small, but the goal is not to read more. The goal is to build a new identity. You're not trying to read books. You're becoming a reader. And when you repeat that action daily, even in small doses, your brain starts recognizing it. This is who I am. And once an action becomes part of your identity, you don't need to force it. You just do it. That's when discipline becomes easy. There's a practical way to do this. Attach the new habit to an existing one. You already have routines you follow daily. Brushing your teeth, making coffee, opening your laptop. These are triggers. You simply attach a new habit to them. For example, after brushing your teeth, take your vitamins. After making coffee, read 5 pages. After opening your laptop, write a few lines. You don't have to remember. You don't have to think. You just connect it. And over time, it becomes automatic. That's how sustainable habits are built, not through willpower, but through smart design. Here's something important. The highest level of habit is not consistency. It's identity. You're not someone who tries to work out. You're someone who works out. You're not someone who is trying to read. You're someone who reads daily. That difference changes everything. Because once it's identity, you don't need to convince yourself anymore. You don't remind yourself not to smoke if you're a non-smoker. You don't remind yourself to exercise if that's just what you do. It becomes default. And at that point, discipline is no longer the challenge. But to get there, you can't rush. You build one habit, stabilize it. Then add another. No rush, no overload, just steady progress. It may feel slow, but it's the fastest way to go far because you don't break the system. You don't restart over and over. You compound. And like compound interest, at first it seems small, but over time, the difference becomes massive. If you feel like you lack discipline, don't try to do more. Make it smaller, make it simpler, and stay consistent. Because discipline is not built from big breakthroughs. It's built from small actions, repeated long enough until they become who you are. Part 7, commit to someone. There's a truth that once you accept it, will explain why you failed so many times, even when you knew exactly what to do. You don't lack knowledge. You lack accountability. And as mentioned clearly, people will do more for others than they'll ever do for themselves. It sounds strange at first, but if you look at your life, you'll see it everywhere. You might skip a workout for yourself, but if you planned it with a friend, you show up. You might delay your own work, but if someone else is depending on you, you deliver. You might break promises to yourself, but you hesitate to break promises to others. Why? Because once someone else is involved, the cost of failure becomes real. It's not just about disappointing yourself. It's about letting someone else down. And that creates a different kind of pressure, a useful one. That's why accountability is one of the most powerful tools for building discipline. When a goal stays in your head, it's easy to negotiate with it. You can say, I'm tired today, I'll do it tomorrow. And no one knows, no one checks, no one holds you to it. But the moment you say it out loud, everything changes. When you tell someone you respect, I'm going to do this, you create a commitment. And once that commitment is visible, your behavior shifts. Not because you suddenly feel more motivated, but because you don't want to break that promise. There's a powerful example. Someone wants to create content consistently, but instead of saying, I'll try, they create a deal. If they succeed, reward. If they fail, consequence. And not a light consequence. Something uncomfortable. Run a marathon unprepared, publicly admit failure, or lose money. It sounds intense, but that's exactly why it works. Because it removes discipline from the emotional zone. It's no longer about whether you feel like doing it. It becomes something you must do to avoid the consequence. This is a key point. Discipline is weak when it depends on feelings. Discipline becomes strong when it's tied to consequences. You can try something simple, pick a small goal. For example, working out 3 times a week, don't keep it in your head. Tell someone. Or better, create a specific commitment. If you don't follow through, something happens. Lose money, do something uncomfortable, or make it public. The point is not punishment. The point is clarity. You know that if you don't act, there will be a result, and that drives behavior. Here's another insight. People work harder to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. You might not feel excited about achieving your goal, but you definitely want to avoid embarrassment, loss, or discomfort. And you can use that not in a negative way, but as a system that keeps you from quitting. Another powerful method is having a partner, not necessarily a mentor, just someone who is also trying to improve. You commit together, track progress, hold each other accountable. You'll be surprised how much your discipline increases just because you're not alone. At the end of the day, it's not about who you commit to. It's about whether you create enough responsibility around your actions, because when you live without accountability, you drift. But when you put yourself in a system that requires consistency, you become reliable. And once you become someone who keeps your word, discipline is no longer a problem. It becomes your standard. Part 8, design your environment. There's a powerful idea that once you truly understand it, will stop you from blaming yourself every time you lack discipline. It goes, your environment will always win over your willpower. It might sound discouraging, but it's actually incredibly practical. You think you lack discipline because you're not strong enough, but in many cases, you're placing yourself in an environment where the wrong choices are easy and the right ones are hard. Let's take a simple example. You want to eat healthier, but your home is full of junk food, snacks, sugary drinks, processed meals. You might resist a few times, but eventually, when you're tired, hungry, or distracted, you choose what's easiest. Not because you're weak, but because your environment is pushing you in that direction. Here's the truth many people avoid. You can't always control your willpower, but you can control your environment. And when you change your environment, your behavior follows. There's a powerful idea. It's easier to avoid the dragon than to slay it. If you constantly have to fight temptation, you will lose eventually. But if you remove the temptation, there's nothing to fight. That's the difference between trying and designing. Trying relies on willpower. Designing relies on systems. Take another example. You want to reduce screen time, but your phone is always next to you. Apps are always available. Notifications are always on. You've created an environment where distraction is the default. So instead of trying to resist, why not change the setup? Delete addictive apps, put your phone in another room when working, only use social media on your computer. Simple action, massive impact, because now you're not constantly fighting yourself. Another example, you want to work out consistently, but every time you have to think, prepare, and motivate yourself, chances are you'll skip it. But if you prepare your workout clothes the night before, if you schedule it, if you have a partner, you turn it into a default behavior. And when something becomes default, it requires far less discipline. Here's something important. Your environment is not just physical. It's also digital, social, and psychological. If your phone is filled with distractions, if your feed is negative, if the people around you lack direction, you're in an environment that makes discipline extremely difficult, and you won't win unless you change it. You don't have to change everything at once. Just start with one area. For example, clean your workspace, remove unnecessary apps, prepare your next day in advance. Small actions, but they send a clear message, I'm serious. And as you continue, your environment shifts. And when your environment shifts, your behavior changes. And when your behavior changes, your results follow. A common mistake is trying to become more disciplined in the same old environment. That's like trying to eat healthy in a kitchen full of junk food. You might win a few times, but you lose in the long run. If you truly want to change, do this. Don't start by forcing yourself. Start by redesigning your environment, because when the environment is right, you don't need to push as hard. And that's how real discipline is built, not by becoming stronger, but by making the right choice, the easiest choice. Part 9, make failure painful. There's a truth that once you understand it, will change the way you think about discipline. Instead of asking, why don't I have discipline? You start asking a more practical question. What happens if I don't follow through? As stated clearly, people work harder to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. This is not just an idea, it's how your brain works. You can set goals. You can visualize success. You can say you want to change, but if not taking action has no real consequence, you will delay. You'll say, it's okay, I'll do it tomorrow. And that tomorrow, repeated enough times, becomes your default. That's why so many people have goals, but no consistent action. Not because they don't care, but because they haven't attached consequences to their behavior. There's a powerful example. Someone hires a coach at a high price, even when they don't have much money. It seems risky, but that financial commitment creates pressure. Not showing up means losing money. Not taking it seriously means wasting the investment. And the real pain is not the money. It's the lack of results. When you put yourself in a situation where inaction is uncomfortable, your behavior changes. Here's the principle. If you want discipline, make quitting harder than continuing. Most people do the opposite. They make quitting easy. No one knows. No one checks. No consequences. In that kind of system, lack of discipline is inevitable. So instead of trying to feel more motivated, change the rules. Create stakes. For example, you want to work out consistently. Instead of saying, I'll try, create a consequence. If you don't follow through, you lose money. If you skip, you do something uncomfortable. If you fail, you make it public. It may sound extreme, but that's what creates seriousness, because now it's not optional. You've turned action into responsibility. Another powerful method, give money to a friend and tell them, if I don't follow through, you keep it. But here's the key. Don't give it to someone who will go easy on you. Give it to someone who won't return it. Or go further, attach it to something you truly don't want. For example, if you fail, donate money to something you strongly disagree with. Just thinking about it creates resistance. And that resistance pushes you to act. The point is not punishment. The point is structure. When consequences are clear, you don't need motivation. You act. Here's something important. Many people think they need to feel ready before they act, but action often comes before emotion. And sometimes the force that drives action is not inspiration. It's pressure. The right kind of pressure doesn't break you. It shapes you. It keeps you from drifting. And over time, actions driven by avoiding pain turn into habits. And once they become habits, you don't need pressure anymore. But to get there, you need an initial push. If you feel like you lack discipline, don't ask, how do I get more motivation? Ask, what happens if I don't do this? And if the answer is nothing, that's the problem. Change that. Because when the cost of inaction is high enough, discipline stops being optional. It becomes necessary. Part 10. Start with the big domino. There's a shift in thinking that can completely change your productivity. Start your day with the hardest problems. It goes against instinct because most people prefer to start with easy tasks, replying to messages, cleaning up small things, doing quick wins. And they believe that creates momentum. But often it's just structured procrastination. You're busy, but not with what matters. You're working, but not on what moves the needle. That's why there's a blunt truth. You don't lack time. You misplace priorities. The hardest tasks are usually the most important ones. But because they're hard, you avoid them. Because they don't feel urgent, you delay them. And instead, you choose easier tasks. tasks that give you the illusion of progress, but at the end of the day, you haven't touched what truly matters. And this pattern repeats every day, not because you lack discipline, but because you're using your energy in the wrong place. Here's something important. Your energy and focus are limited resources. The morning is when you have the most of both. You're clearer, more creative, less distracted. But if you spend that time on small tasks, you waste your most valuable window. By the time you return to important work, you're drained. You lack clarity, you lack energy, and you delay again. That's the cycle many people get stuck in. They don't avoid hard work because they're weak. They avoid it because they haven't decided it must come first. So how do you fix this? Don't start your day by asking, what should I do? Start with, what matters most? Just one thing, not 5, not 10. One task that creates the biggest impact. And then do it first, before checking your phone, before replying to messages, before anything else pulls your attention. If you do that, you're already ahead of most people. Here's another key idea. Momentum doesn't come from completing many small tasks. It comes from completing one meaningful task. When you finish something hard, you feel different. Not just busy, but effective, and that feeling creates real motivation. Not external hype, but internal progress. A common mistake is waiting to feel ready. But the truth is, you rarely will. If you wait for motivation, you'll wait too long. Discipline here is not about liking hard work. It's about deciding to do it before you avoid it. One effective method is scheduling it, not just listing it, blocking time for it. For example, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., your most important task. No interruptions, no changes, no negotiation. When you put it on your calendar, you turn it into a commitment. And when you respect your calendar, you respect your goals. Here's something else. Many people feel stressed not because they do too much, but because they delay what matters. That task sits in their mind, creating pressure, creating discomfort, and they carry that weight all day. But when you do it early, you free yourself. You feel lighter, clearer, more en control. If you want more discipline, don't start by doing more. Start by choosing better, choose what matters most, and do it first, every day. Over time, the difference becomes obvious. You're no longer just busy, you're effective, and that's when discipline starts working for you. Part 11, eliminate useless decisions. There's something subtle that most people overlook. Discipline is not just about what you do, it's also about how many decisions you have to make each day. And as stated clearly, decide once, then move on to bigger problems. It sounds simple, but if you pay attention, you're making countless small decisions every day. What should I wear? What should I eat? What should I do first? Should I work out today? Each of these takes mental energy. And the problem is not the individual decision. It's the total number of them. When you make too many decisions, you get tired. And when you're tired, you choose what's easiest. This is called decision fatigue. You don't always notice it, but you feel it. In the morning, you're clear. By the afternoon, you hesitate more. By the evening, you default to convenience. And convenience is rarely the best choice. That's why many people start their day disciplined, but fall apart later. Not because they become weaker, but because they've used up their decision energy. Highly disciplined people understand this. They don't try to make better decisions. They reduce the number of decisions they need to make. For example, some people wear the same type of outfit every day. It may seem boring, but it's strategic. They don't want to waste energy on low-impact choices. They save that energy for bigger decisions. Business strategy. Direction. This is not limitation. It's optimization. You don't have to go that extreme, but you can simplify parts of your life. For example, prepare your outfit the night before. Eat consistent meals. Schedule recurring tasks. When these become defaults, you don't have to think. And when you don't think, you save energy. Here's another way to see it. Discipline is not about always choosing correctly. It's about removing unnecessary choices. You don't need to resist junk food if it's not in your house. You don't need to fight your phone if the apps are gone. You don't need to decide every time if you already decided. This is a powerful shift from reacting daily to designing in advance. You decide once when you're clear. Then you follow through. No negotiation, no rethinking. This frees up a huge amount of mental energy, and you can use it for what truly matters. Here's something to think about. Many people say they don't have time, but often they're losing time in indecision, hesitation, overthinking, changing plans. These don't produce results. They slow you down. If you want more discipline, start by reducing choices. Fewer choices, less hesitation. Less hesitation, faster action, and faster action builds momentum. A simple way to start: pick 3 to 5 areas in your life to standardize. For example, sleep time, work hours, meals, morning routine. Make them consistent. Not perfect, just stable. Over time, you'll notice something. You're less mentally drained, you're clearer, faster, more decisive, and that's the foundation of discipline. Not doing more, but removing what's unnecessary so you can focus on what matters. Part 12, your social environment shapes you. There's a phrase you've probably heard before, but maybe haven't fully absorbed. You become the average of the people you spend the most time with. But there's a deeper version of this idea. You become the average of the people you allow to influence you. It sounds simple, but if you look at your life, it's happening every day. The way you think, the way you act, the way you approach problems, a lot of it isn't purely your own. It's shaped by your environment. The people you talk to, the content you consume, the voices you listen to, and if that environment lacks discipline, it becomes incredibly difficult for you to stay disciplined. Not because you're weak, but because you're going against the current. Imagine trying to eat healthy while everyone around you constantly encourages unhealthy habits. Trying to stay focused while your environment doesn't value it. Trying to grow while no one around you supports that direction. You can try, but it's exhausting. And over time, you'll start to drift. That's why this idea matters. Discipline is contagious. When you're around disciplined people, you naturally become more disciplined. When you're around unfocused people, you tend to drift. Not because you lack strength, but because humans adapt to their environment. It's automatics. You don't even notice it happening. So the real question is not, am I disciplined? It's, is my environment supporting discipline? Here's a practical way to think about it. Look at your goals. Then look at the people you spend the most time with. Ask yourself, being around them, does it make my goals easier or harder? If the answer is harder, something needs to change. This doesn't mean cutting everyone off. You don't have to remove people from your life completely, but you may need to create distance. You can still care about them without letting them shape your daily behavior. At the same time, you need to actively seek better environments. People who are focused, people who are disciplined, people who are moving towards something meaningful. You don't need to be close to them immediately. Just exposure is enough. Observe, learn, absorb. And here's something powerful. In today's world, you don't even need physical proximity. You can build a virtual environment through books, podcasts, videos, content you follow. You can surround yourself with the right influences, even if they're not physically near you. And that influence is real. If you spend time daily listening to people who think differently, if you read from those who've achieved what you want, if you follow disciplined individuals, you will change. Not overnight, but gradually. Your thinking shifts, your standards rise, your behavior follows. And that's the key, because discipline is not about forcing yourself every day. It's about living in an environment where disciplined behavior feels normal. A common mistake is trying to change yourself without changing your environment. That's like trying to run faster while everything around you is slowing you down. You can move forward, but it's harder than it needs to be. If you want to go far, you need the right environment. It doesn't have to be perfect, just better than what you have now. Even a small shift creates a difference. Because over time, you become that environment. And when that happens, discipline is no longer something you struggle to maintain. It becomes your standard. Part 13. Visualize your goals and the 300% rule. There's a common mistake people make when it comes to goals. They think having a goal is enough, but in reality, goals don't create results. Your relationship with the goal does. And there's a powerful principle. You need 100% clarity, 100% belief, 100% consistency. It sounds impossible, but it's actually a framework to evaluate yourself. Most people don't fail because they lack goals. They fail because their goals are vague. They say, I want to be successful. I want to make more money. I want to improve. But what does that actually mean? How much is more? What does better look like? If you're not clear, your brain doesn't know what to aim for. You can't hit a target you haven't defined. That's the first part, clarity. You need to know exactly what you want, as specific as possible, not abstract. Something you can visualize, a number, a result, a clear outcome. Clarity gives direction, but direction alone is not enough. The second part is belief. You might know what you want, but if you don't believe it's possible, your actions will be weak. You'll try, but not fully. You'll start, but quit easily. Belief is not blind optimism. It's the decision that I will find a way, even if you don't know how yet. That belief keeps you going when things get hard. The third part is what most people lack: consistency. You can be clear, you can believe, but if you don't act consistently, nothing happens. Many people feel motivated for a few days, then they fall back into old habits. Not because the goal is wrong, but because they don't sustain action. That's why visualization matters. Not as fantasy, but as connection. There's an important detail. Some people review their goals, not monthly, but daily, even multiple times a day. Not because they're obsessed, but because they want alignment. They look at their schedule. They look at how they spend time, and they ask, is what I'm doing today moving me toward my goal? If not, they adjust. That's how they maintain consistency. Here's something powerful. Your brain doesn't clearly distinguish between vivid imagination and real experience. When you visualize clearly, repeatedly, you start to feel it as real. And when it feels real, you act differently. You become more serious, more focused, more persistent. This isn't magic. It's how your mind works. A practical way to apply this: don't just think about your goals. Interact with them. If you want a car, go sit in it. If you want a different lifestyle, go experience it. If you want to become someone else, start acting like that person in small ways. You don't need everything immediately. You just need to make it feel real. Because once it feels real, quitting becomes harder. A common mistake is setting goals and forgetting them. People only remember them when they feel inspired. The rest of the time, they live disconnected from them and then wonder why nothing changes. If you want discipline, don't just set goals, live with them, see them, repeat them, connect with them, and most importantly, act in alignment with them. Because discipline is not the end goal. It's the process of becoming the person who is ready to receive that goal. And when you have clarity, belief, and consistency, results become inevitable. After going through all 13 of these ideas, you might feel something familiar. Yeah, I get it. But understanding is not the same as changing. And if there's one thing to take away from this, it's not the 13 hacks, not the systems, not even the strategies. It's something much simpler. Discipline is not something you wait to have. It's something you build through small, consistent actions. You don't need to change everything. You don't need to become perfect overnight. You just need to pick one thing, one habit, one behavior, one small shift, and take it seriously. Because when you start keeping promises to yourself, you're not just building discipline. You're building trust. And once you trust yourself, everything becomes easier. You don't need reminders. You don't need daily motivation. You don't need to wait for inspiration. You act because it's who you are. That's the real goal. Not forcing discipline, but becoming a disciplined person. If you feel like your life isn't where you want it to be, don't try to fix everything at once. Just start today. Keep it small. Keep it real. And if you stay consistent, tomorrow will be slightly better than today. And the next day, a little more. You don't need perfection. You just need progress. 1% better every day